Subscribe or they will haunt you.
What's your best true spooky story? Serious. Mine is a bit different. Me and friend of mine live in rural Ireland. We were going for a walk in the grounds behind a castle. As we were coming to the end of our walk, it was pretty dark and we glanced into an area that has a well and something caught our eyes. I stayed a bit further back, walked over and looked into the well only to see two yellow eyes looking up at me and a sinister looking grin from a girl with dark hair. Naturally we ran like little girls. We were followed by this little girl all night. We went to graveyard and found her watching us while she sat on a tree. We went under a bridge a few miles outside of the village and she was standing at the other end of the bridge and slowly started walking toward us. We both saw her every single time. Explanation is easy. We dropped a shitload of LSD and were hallucinating. Just fascinating that we both saw the exact same thing. I never told him what I saw in the well until he told me what he had seen. It matched. Freshman year at my university, we had a creepy, old dorm on campus that no one was living in. Everyone generally avoided it because it just had an uncomfortable feeling when you got close to it and felt like you were being watched. There are rumored stories about it of two women dying there on separate occasions. One murder, one suicide, and they're the ones who haunt the building. One night, a friend was in a bad mood because his girlfriend had broken up with him. So I was walking around campus with him to let him get it off his chest and just trying to help him feel better. We walked past the dorm and I brought it up about it being haunted and was telling him the stories to try and take his mind off it. So, the way the bottom floor was set up, there were two doors on both sides of the building. In the hallway ran the entire length of the building and you could see the other door. We walked up to one of the windows and were just looking down the hall when two girls walked out of a room wearing clothes that looked like they were from the 70s/80s and stood there in the hall looking at each other, not speaking. Then, one girl slowly turned her head and looked straight at us, slowly turned her head back, then turned and walked the opposite way from us down the hall. So we ran to the other side of the building, but we couldn't find them. We came back to the original door and watched them do the same thing all over again. We looked at each other and ran. This freaked me out for a while, especially after when I was sleeping in my room and all my posters fell off the wall at the same time. After telling this story to another friend, he convinced me to go back with him and try to find a way in. We found an open window which we later found out was the room the girl hung herself in, and climbed in and started walking down the hall. We wandered around the building a bit and just started to notice generally creepy things. Water faucets started coming on. We'd walk through one room and then back through and a chair would be moved. On the first floor, a desk was turned upside down under the stairwell. As we were getting close to leaving, a lot more water faucets came on and kept getting louder and louder. Then when we got back to the room to go back out of the window, and as we put our hands on the window, the door slammed closed. So we ripped the door open, dove out and ran back to our dorm and never went back. I currently live in a haunted house. I've heard voices, footsteps. Lights have been turned on off. One of the ghosts has a thing for silverware. I hear it clattering in the drawer all the time, and sometimes a knife or two will end up in the wrong slot in the drawer. But the strangest, scariest experience I had was the first night I spent in the house. I wasn't finished moving in. There were boxes everywhere. I didn't even have my mattress up there yet. I was bedding on an old futon mattress, watching a video on my phone, when I get the pins and needles feeling of my feet falling asleep. Except it wasn't on my feet, it was on the top of my head in the shape of a hand. I said, "Good night," turned off my light and tried to sleep. When I woke up, my closet door was ajar, but other than that everything was otherwise untouched. I guess whoever my unseen roommate is just wanted to check out who I was on my first night. I lived in an old apartment in 2002. The place was built in 1900, so it was just over 100 years old when I moved in. The living room and kitchen were fine, but the bathroom and bedroom were unnerving. Like I just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the bedroom if the closet door was open. Those unnerving feelings just became moderately uncomfortable as I settled in. I felt safe in the bedroom, but only if the door was locked. One night I was dead asleep when there was a loud bang on my bedroom door. When I got up the courage to get out of bed, I checked the apartment and all the windows were closed and locked from the inside. The door still had the chain secured. No one was in there. I mentioned the closet in the bedroom. I never liked going in there, and I never liked if the door was open. For some reason, in my head I would hear gasping noises. So for that reason, the closet stayed closed. A month or more after I was woken to the bang on my door. I was dead asleep, but something woke me up, and it was a pressure on me like being held down. It was pitch black in my room. I couldn't see anything, but I knew someone was standing over me. When I could finally turn on a bedside lamp, no one was there. After then I couldn't sleep in the dark. I had to sleep with a lamp on. That incident scared the life out of me. And after that the unnerving feeling of being watched intensified. Friends would come over and comment about being uncomfortable in the bathroom like being watched. It became so uncomfortable for me. When I had the chance to move to another unit, I jumped at it. I packed up and got out. After me, several people rented the apartment and they would move out within months. I became friendly with the building manager and I told him that I felt the place was haunted. He kind of laughed it off. Years after, they were renovating the place. Building manager was doing some painting in there. The building owner was there too. I went and checked out the apartment and it looked nicer. It didn't feel as creepy. I got to talking with the building owner, and through the course of conversation he just throws it out there that a former tenant committed suicide in the closet by hanging themselves. He also mentioned that the original designer of the building lived in that apartment and died in there. I wasn't mad when I heard that, but felt validated that what I experienced was real. I went to use the bathroom at work and when I entered, there was no one in there. The bathroom has 4 urinals and 4 stalls, 1 handicap, and I did not see any feet in any of the stalls. I took up my normal spot inside one stall and was doing my business when I heard the sound of someone peeing into one of the urinals, but no one had entered the bathroom. The door is heavy and loud when it closes, so I would have heard someone entering. After a normal amount of time, the peeing stopped and I heard a few footsteps, but the door never opened. When I finished up I did a cursory look and there was no one in the bathroom. It's a ridiculous story, but I definitely heard a pee ghost. While at uni my friends and I ran out of booze. Hardly any shops were open because it was late on, so the only option was to walk the mile or so to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. Between the supermarket and the dorms we lived in was just row after row of suburban houses which all looked the same. As we were walking down one road we passed a field with a large campfire and some people riding horses around it. There were people playing musical instruments and general sounds of a good time going on. The horses and fire and the lanterns which were dotted about gave it a very old-fashioned feel. Maybe 5 minutes after passing the field, now walking past houses again, one of my friends commented on how weird and out of place that gathering of people had been. My other friend and I had been thinking exactly the same thing, so curious, we turned around and walked back to find out exactly what was going on. There was nothing there. Not just no people or horses. There was no field. Just more and more houses. Even though we were absolutely certain we were on the right road, as we'd simply turned around, we walked up and down the neighboring roads too. We found nothing. We weren't drunk, though we'd had some drinks, and so I've got absolutely no idea what happened that night. I've posted this on my other account, copying and pasting it here. The scariest thing I've had happen while camping. So I live in Eastern Oregon, and my mom lives in Western Oregon. I went to visit her for the summer, and she's very outdoorsy, so we decided to take the 1-hour drive from her city to the coast. We end up at this free campsite at the top of this hill. Huge foothills of the coastal mountains. about a 25-minute drive from the top where the campsite is to the bottom where the main road was. And we were the only campers there. We relaxed for the rest of the day, made food, etc. A truck full of men drive up the hill and talk with my mom. IDK what about, wasn't suspicious at the time, and they leave us. Fast forward to the middle of the night. I wake up to my mom sitting straight up in the tent. I wake easily, so I heard her gasp and it woke me. As soon as she saw I was awake, she put her hand over my mouth because I was starting to ask her what's wrong. It was dead silent, and all of a sudden you hear footsteps right beside the tent. The little flap that covers the zipper was even moving. Thankfully my mom has quick wits and said very loudly, "Kenny, grab the gun." Kenny is my dad, although that doesn't matter. And mind you, he was not there, just us girls like I previously said. They left. No harm was done. Thank the Lord for my mama. TL. 2 girls at a campsite alone. People outside tent in the middle of the night, and my mom pulled some badassery. 4 years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into 2 apartments. The house was known as the old boys' home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues, but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyway, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day while I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m. I had heard a small voice saying, "Mom, Mom, Mommy." I had sat up in bed but didn't see anything, so I reached over my boyfriend trying to grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was still hearing the voice, but I couldn't feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get in our bed and I was reaching for her. There was nobody there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. Around 1 a.m. again, my dog had started to whimper at outdoors, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in a bed when someone lies down next to you, where the bed pushes in and there is a warmth in your back? I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over. My boyfriend wasn't in the bed and I felt the bed release pressure. Whatever was laying next to me has gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room, and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in that house. Screw moving the bed, I would be out of that room. Have you posted this story before? I'm pretty sure I read it before because I remember the fireplace in the room. Yeah, I have. So a little more story on moving the bed. There was a floor vent right next to this fireplace that led to the basement. The basement was shared by myself and the other apartment. We just stored holiday totes and bicycles in there. The vent led down to the showers in the basement, which was just a large room with 5 or 6 shower heads on one wall and a drain in the middle of the room. It just had a really creepy feel to it, so I thought maybe it was me pushing my bed near that vent. I don't know. I would love to talk to the new tenants to see if they've had anything happen. When my grandparents bought their house for a family of 10, my grandpa found a fake wall upstairs. He tore it down to make more room for the family. Behind the wall we eat children clothes and play toys, almost like they walked off the room in a hurry. My mom told me stories of sitting in her room and something circling the walls around her, sounding like wallpaper being torn. When she moved out, my aunt moved into the same room. She would wake up with pictures she hung up laying on her chest in the morning. My cousins also have stories of hearing footsteps coming up the stairs and stopping outside their door in the middle of the night. I still don't go upstairs at their house because it's always cold and I get weird vibes up there. Even in my adult life I have scary dreams that take place in their upstairs. This is for real terrifying. I might be a wuss, but this would be enough to make me sell me house and just get out of there. I posted this in a thread a while ago, but gonna do it again because it applies here. When I was in high school, my uncle would throw me a couple bucks to help babysit his kids with my aunt. They lived in a 2-story house by the water. nice area. The kids were about 3 and 6. One day I was sitting in their den on my phone when I started to hear a baby crying. Thinking it was the 3-year-old, I headed to the bottom of the stairs to check and see if my aunt was up there dealing with it. I called for her a couple times with no response. The baby kept crying. I called for her one more time, and when I got no response I started walking up the stairs. Then I heard my cousins and aunt playing outside. All the hairs on my body stood up and I literally felt a chill run down my spine. I quietly turned around, walked down the stairs, got in my car and drove away. The baby was still crying when I closed the door behind me. A few years later I was drunk at a family party and told my uncle the story. He told me that he and his wife used to hear the baby too, and apparently the previous owners had a kid die of SIDS in that room upstairs. He's uber Catholic and had a mass said for the baby. He said after that it never happened again. Still gives me the willies when I talk about it though.